Good morning. This is Janet from the West End Library in Laurelton, Pennsylvania, and I'm doing my monthly book review. This month I am doing After the Funeral, written by Agatha Christie. Being a fan of murder mystery stories and movies, I thought I would give Agatha Christie a try. I had first read this book many months ago and really did not enjoy it. Mr. Michael, my fellow employee, had chosen for the month of January in-house display the topic of British mystery movies. Along with the Sherlock Holmes series, he also had Poirot and Miss Marple. Both of these titles were mysteries by the great Agatha Christie. He had told me a little bit about Poirot and how much his mother, fellow employee Miss Judy, had enjoyed the stories. I thought, why not? As I mentioned above, I am a mystery reader, and the first time through reading After the Funeral and not being familiar with Hercule Poirot at all, I had felt the book was too slow-moving and very confusing. There were so many characters involved, it was very confusing for me to keep them all straight. But after having binged 13 Poirot DVD seasons, watching quite a few episodes twice because of my husband's falling asleep the first time through, I gained a great appreciation for Agatha Christie's hero, Hercule Poirot. After watching the series, the first season is available at the West End Library, and the remainder of the seasons are available at the Public Library of Union County in Lewisburg. I reread Agatha Christie's books After the Funeral. Now that I was more familiar with Agatha Christie's writing style, her hero, Hercule Poirot, all the characters she wrote in, and more than one mystery being involved in each story, I enjoyed it so much more. As a matter of fact, I have placed a hold on another of her books revolving around Hercule Poirot. After the Funeral begins just that way. After the funeral of the last patriarch of an old family in England has passed away. At the time, between the two great wars, there was still a lot of wealth throughout the countryside. Huge, huge, almost palatial homesteads and hundreds of acres attached. Today, a lot of those places have been divided up into smaller parcels, homes having been torn down due to no more family money to maintain them, family greed, and World War II, a lot of the bigger properties were appropriated by the British and U.S. services to house soldiers, use as command centers for the forces, build airfields, become hospitals, rest homes, and be available for other uses. In the Poirot novels, a lot of these properties were still held in private hands, but with monies becoming more scarce, especially when the remainder of family, mainly siblings and offspring, were in line with their hands out wanting part of the estate's proceeds. So after the funeral, the death of Richard Abernethy, the cast of characters come back to the estate property for the usual after-funeral luncheon and the reading of the will. Everyone was expecting something to come their way, and they realized that none of them were in a financial position to take on the estate and maintain it in all of its grandeur. In front of the family solicitor, lawyer, and the family members, Richard's sister Cora makes a comment referring to her brother being murdered. Of course, this comment brought shock and began sowing the seeds of doubt within the family, even more so following the very gory murder of Cora just the next day. Enter Hercule Poirot, an old friend of the Abernethy's family solicitor, who's requesting help with the question of possible murder of Richard and the recent murder of Cora. In Poirot's usual style, all of the characters are interviewed and sometimes interviewed more than once, and the little gray cells, is how he refers to his brain, begins putting all of the details together. Everyone thinks that Cora's murder was by someone just wanting to rob her home. When Poirot discovers that Cora and her late husband were oil paint artists, and Cora had a hobby of buying paintings at sales hoping to purchase a surprise painting from one of the masters, the idea of robbery seems more plausible. Going to each family member's home and places of employment also gives Poirot some background on each of the characters, how they plan to spend their inheritance, and gaining knowledge of the family interaction and the usual wants by family members when dividing up household items, as well as their integrity. One of the family members begins to realize that something just doesn't seem quite right with the family interaction after the funeral, but is unable to put her fingers on it. Each family member had their own perspective on the uniqueness of Cora's character and giving their own ideas. She was the family oddball and had certain habits that everyone remembers and is used as a point of determining who her murderer was. One of the details of the Poirot story that I enjoyed is how he gathers the cast of players together and goes through all of the details he has observed, information uncovered, and how his little gray cells have come to the conclusions that he presents to them all. Each person has their own bit in the story, and the murderer's identity wavers back and forth between them until Poirot divulges who the murderer actually is and the details of how and why. I certainly did enjoy reading After the Funeral the second time and was able to discern the workings of Agatha Christie's writing style and how she shows Poirot's unique style of solving a murder. So give Agatha Christie a try and also consider renting the Poirot DVDs from your local library.